UFC 303 this Saturday in Vegas. Could it get any better? It sure can when you get in with my partners, DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. It is a banger of the card, and the light heavyweight championship is on the line in the main event. New to DraftKings? Check this out. New customers who bet just $5 get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. When you sign up, use the code Sonnen. DraftKings, the crown is yours. That's right. New customers can bet just $5 on anything and receive $150 in bonus bets instantly. From the much anticipated title fights to the exciting undercard bouts, DraftKings is giving customers a shot to get in on the action all night long. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. DraftKings is the one-stop shop for all things daily fantasy, where you got a shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. New customers, use my promo code Sonnen. Bet just $5 on any wager and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code Sonnen only at DraftKings Sportsbook. 185 pounds, what should be done? Now, let me explain your options to you, okay? Here's the players. Dricus du Plessis, Israel Adesanya. That fight might have been announced. I've been out of town. I went to Brazil. I stayed in it. Like, that fight might have been announced. But off the top of my head, I know that we all expect that, and we expect it for Perth, but was it officially announced? Don't think you have to answer that. I'm sharing with you, okay, we've got those players, and they're off the board because we're putting them together, whether that's become official or that's just what we think. That's going in a main event spot for Perth. Great. Let's talk about who's next. And that's what the question is always, who's next? Somewhere in the shuffle, it's not Chimaev. Now, whether you like that or don't, we at least do understand it. If Chimaev had a fight that was not a title fight and pulled out of that, right, missed that fight, we understand that his return isn't going to be elevated above the one that he missed. Okay, but that's important, right? This is an undefeated player who was at one point announced number one contender. Let's remove Chimaev. Let's understand that Arnold Allen, as great as he is not going to that spot now. At the end of this year, we could be having a different conversation. Let's understand that Ikram just got eliminated. And let's be very realistic with ourselves that we are down to Robert Whittaker and Sean Strickland. Now, when I ask you what should be done, and I tell you you've got your options, okay? Your option is you pick either Sean or Whittaker to be the opponent regardless of outcome. And that's a very rare thing in this sport. In fact, off the top of my head, I can think of twice it's ever been done. I know we throw the word out almost weekly, number one contender, but I can only think of 2 times where we had a number one contender with the title fight still to come, and regardless who won that match, that number one contender was going to get to go in. I can only think of 2. So, how do we solidify it? If we are in fact going to say that it's a straight up, you are next, if it's that kind of a situation, then let's just bring him to Perth and weigh him in and put him in a backup spot. Meanwhile, if it's not an if-then statement, it's not if Adesanya wins or if du Plessis wins, this guy is next. If it's not that kind of situation, I don't think we should put the guy in the backup spot. I think if either Whittaker or Sean goes to Perth, weighs in, goes through that process, doesn't get the fight, that they've got to be next. I don't believe that you can do that to Sean, let's say. The fight doesn't materialize like Izzy and du Plessis goes off as scheduled, and then the winner takes on Whittaker. I think that you guys would agree that would just be bad form, and nobody would feel right about that, including Whittaker. Like Whittaker even looking like, I don't know about that. I think you got to give it to Sean. Okay, great. So there's one of your options. One of your options is that right now, down to Whittaker and Sean, we are going to identify who the guy is. Not only is that going to be the guy, win or lose Izzy or du Plessis, we're also going to bring that guy along into a backup position. Here's the problem with announcing it. Before you say, yes, that's what we should do, and before you say Sean or Whittaker, the problem you do when you make that announcement and or that kind of a guarantee is you miss the one thing that you don't realize is in the board right in front of you. It's so obvious you don't see it. It hides in plain sight, which is if the fight between du Plessis and Izzy produces either the kind of entertainment or speculation or moreover controversy where we need to rematch it. That's always the one that people miss. And it's why the promotion doesn't lock themselves into these situations. You literally don't know what's going to happen until it's done. So you don't promise and you don't lock someone in because you want to preserve the right. And this has already been tested. When Izzy was upset 5 straight rounds as a 6-1 favorite in his home turf by Sean, they tried to rematch Izzy and Sean. When they ran out of time for that, that is where you insert Duplessis, who, by the way, is now the champion and never would have even been put in the spot had things gone by the book. So when I'm telling you your options and I'm asking you to make a pick, you've got to consider things that you probably didn't know you had to consider. So now it comes down to straight up, do you want to do that to Sean or do you want to put that to Whittaker? Which guy is next? Or you've got behind door number 2. Whittaker gets wind of this, sees it's not going to be him, and preemptively strikes by challenging Sean. Now you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a problem because if Sean, who's got something better so he doesn't have time for Whittaker, takes that attitude and doesn't explain that to the audience, just turns it down, he just lost the fight. There is nothing that was true on your playground growing up that isn't true for the octagon. If one guy wants to fight another guy, regardless of who would have, if one guy says no, he lost in front of the whole school. And the school's not going to, well, he said no because it would have been easy and he could have beat him. It doesn't work that way. So how you play it and when you play it is extremely important. And what knowledge you give to the audience when you make your move of accepting and or denying is extremely important. So now we're just going to come down to the numbers. We're not going to come to storylines. We're not going to get to who deserves it. We're not going to look at the rankings. We're just going to look at the numbers. What do you do when you have Whittaker, who's had as good a career as they get as a world champion, against Sean, who's had as good of a career as they get as a world champion? What do you do if you don't have head-to-head competition? Number 2, according to the NCAA and the International Olympic Committee, is you defer to something known as common opponents. There's 2 common opponents right off the bat. Whittaker, not once but twice, failed against Izzy. Sean beat Izzy all 5 rounds that they contested. It looks like it would go to Sean, but sometimes it's not. Tell me if you've got more evidence. Okay, great. In this case, we do because we have Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa versus Whittaker was a great back-and-forth close fight that leaned towards Whittaker. All of the rounds went to Sean. So it would seem as though, unless you're dismissing governing bodies like the NCAA and the IOC as great precedents, that you're going to have to defer not only to rankings, but to common opponents, of which both would favor Sean Strickland. You might go against that, and you might not like it. But if you're Team Whittaker and you look at the board and you see it objectively the way Chael does, you're not left with how to play. Your play is to not wait for the announcement that it's going to be Strickland. Your play is to come out and challenge Strickland for the spot, of which Team Strickland could fumble the ball. It is a fumble to go, I've got better options and I don't have time for you. It's how you present it to the audience because the audience doesn't understand everything that I just explained. And if you turn him down and you back down publicly, no different than if you back down on recess, you lose.